OpenAI has released new documentation called Reasoning Best Practices, which provides guidance on how to effectively use reasoning models. Not just OpenAI's, but also others like Gemini and DeepSeek. The documentation outlines key differences between standard AI models and reasoning models and provides insights into how to prompt them effectively for the best results. In the video, I'll also be sharing a boilerplate prompt based on these best practices, so you can get the most out of reasoning models in your own work. Okay, let's quickly dive into the tips that OpenAI has provided. The first one relates to APIs, which isn't really relevant for the chat interface, so we'll come back to it later. Alright, so the next point is pretty straightforward. Keep your prompt simple and to the point. No extra fluff, no unnecessary words. Just clear, direct instructions. It might seem obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people still overcomplicate things. Next, OpenAI advises against adding chain of thought prompts when using these reasoning models. This refers to asking the models to think step by step or explain their reasoning. Since they are already reasoning models, there's no need to do that. You might think people don't make this mistake, but trust me, I've seen many, not just on social platforms but in my daily life as well, who still ask these models to think step by step or to actually think. Next up, we have a really important tip for these reasoning models. Using delimiters, which are essentially separators for your text. These can include Markdown, XML tags, or even section titles. An example of this is shown here. You could provide your context at the top, followed by any examples, and then your instructions. Separating these elements allows the reasoning model to process the information in a more structured way, helping it think better and generate more accurate outputs. At the end, I'll be providing an example prompt that, when used with any reasoning model, will help you get really good and accurate answers just as you want. Next up, we have an interesting tip. Try zero shot first, then few shot if needed. This means that with these reasoning models, you should first attempt without providing an example. Given their capabilities, they're generally good at predicting what kind of text you need. However, if there are edge cases or if the model doesn't generate the desired output, it's a good practice to provide examples of how you want the result to look. When doing this, make sure the examples closely align with the prompt instructions to avoid any discrepancies between the two. Next, the following 2 points emphasize being specific, especially when imposing conditions. For instance, if you're setting a budget, like $500, be clear about the conditions. When asking for a solution under such conditions, it's important to also specify the goal of your prompt. This means that with a budget of $500 set, you should explain the goal of that budget to the reasoning model. This helps guide its thinking and iterative process, allowing for more focused and relevant responses. Now, before moving on to the last point, let's revisit the first one, which mentioned that developer messages are replacing system messages. These messages are simply a way of guiding the model. They're system prompts that have been changed with the API requests. Now, if you look at the last point, you'll notice that when you request something from a reasoning model via the API, it will avoid generating responses with Markdown formats, such as separated code blocks. To enable this, you'll need to include the string formatting re-enabled on the first line of the developer message. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay, before we move on to the rest of the documentation that OpenAI released, let me show you an example prompt that works really well with the reasoning model. Credit goes to Alvaro Cintas, whom I found on x.com. Here, you can see that we've structured the prompt into different sections: context, example, and instruction. In the instruction section, we've correctly added limitations by specifying that the output should be original, engaging, and suitable for, followed by the target audience. This helps refine the response. The goal of this prompt is to ensure that the generated content matches the style, tone, and structure of the provided examples. To achieve this, we place relevant examples in the example section, helping guide the model. Finally, in the context section, we provide background information that assists the model in its iterative process. OpenAI has also provided a customer service example to further clarify the difference between their reasoning and non-reasoning GPT models. The reasoning models have been dubbed planners, while the non-reasoning models are called workhorses due to their lower latency and higher efficiency. In this example, O1 is used to process policy documents and create structured routines, using its accurate word processing and ability to analyze large amounts of data to generate the required information. Next, the actions are carried out by GPT-4o Mini, GPT-4o, and GPT-4o again, which execute the necessary tasks based on the generated routines. Finally, after these actions are completed, another reasoning model, O3 Mini, is used to validate the results. This example highlights how AI agentic systems are built by strategically combining both types of models: reasoning models for planning and structure, and non-reasoning models for execution and efficiency. Next up, they've highlighted when to actually use reasoning models. First, they talk about navigating ambiguous tasks. This basically means that whenever the meaning of your prompt is unclear, instead of making assumptions, these reasoning models actually ask for clarification, ensuring they understand your intent before proceeding. This not only improves accuracy, but also saves time. Then, they've given an analogy of finding a needle in a haystack, which refers to their ability to parse through large amounts of data and pinpoint exactly what you're looking for. Their reasoning capability allows them to sift through massive amounts of unstructured information and extract the most relevant details. Because of this ability to process large amounts of data, they're also excellent at identifying relationships between different points within that unstructured data. This allows them to organize information correctly and create structured profiles. If you recall the diagram from earlier, the agent was responsible for generating routines from policy documentation, and that was due to this very ability. Next, we have multi-step agentic planning, which means that, thanks to their step-by-step reasoning, these models can lay out a complete plan from start to finish. That's why they're referred to as planners. As an agent acts, it's able to delegate different tasks to various LLMs, assigning them based on the level of computational power they require. One of the most fascinating use cases for these models is visual reasoning. Since O1 combines both vision and reasoning capabilities, it's able to understand highly detailed architectural drawings. OpenAI even mentioned that it was able to generate a comprehensive bill of materials just by analyzing a complex architectural blueprint. After scanning the image, it successfully identified and listed all the materials included in the drawing, which is an incredibly advanced capability. Now, when it comes to code, you might think that these reasoning models are slower or less efficient. However, while non-reasoning models, especially GPT models, might struggle with coding, Claude is much better at it. But with reasoning models, the key advantage is that they make far fewer mistakes. That means you don't have to waste time constantly correcting small errors like you would with non-reasoning models, unlike O3 Mini, which doesn't require a lot of manual corrections. That's the breakdown of OpenAI's reasoning best practices. Follow these prompting techniques to get better results from reasoning models. And if you found this helpful, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more.